going on, everybody? Nick Powills, publisher of 1851franchise.com. What I love about these sessions is we're going to have a conversation with Bob and Collin in a second as we dive deep into the melting pot, but it's a conversation. And so if you're watching this live or you're watching it recorded, there's value in this conversation because it's unscripted, and we're going to dive into a whole bunch of reasons why melting pot. If you are watching live, you can feel free to use the commenting feature and add comments to our discussion, and we'll make sure that we get those addressed. So, Bob, I'm going to start with you, and it's such a wide question, but give me the state of what's going on with franchise development and the melting pot today. Give me a sense of what is the state of the union about it.
Yeah, well, Nick, as you know, one of the things that we're doing is working with your organization to really help us put jet fuel on our franchise growth efforts. And, we're spending money in various ways in terms of talent, bringing in Collin Benyo, who comes from operations and really understands the beauty of the concept, and he can communicate that to franchise candidates from the outside world that are not already a part of the melting pot effectively, to spending money on a new website that just launched recently, to spending money on digital marketing efforts in amounts that we've not done before. And frankly, the last 2.5 years, we've only been focused on one thing, which is helping our franchisees in a really, really challenging time in the brand's evolution. And that worked because they're succeeding quite well. And a number of them, more than a handful, have expressed interest in growing. So that's kind of, why we wanted to have this conversation, is to talk about how to do that if you are a franchisee who is interested in growing. And if you're not, if you're from outside the melting pot family, you'll get to learn a little bit about how to become a part of that family.
Okay, I'm going to zero in on one thing that you just said that I think is deeply valuable. And a lot of franchisors don't say this, and this is why I want to call it out and pull it back to the top, which is over the last 2 years when things were challenging, and it's primarily challenging for the last 2 years means there was COVID or the pandemic. And you said we hyper-focused on supporting our franchisees. And if I'm a buyer into any brand, like, brands talk about how they support franchisees or that they want to support franchisees. Very few say we're going to really hyper focus on this. Franchise development is irrelevant right now. Let's go make sure our family's taken care of. Dive deeper into that, Bob. I want to know, from your gut, how did you do this? How did it make you feel? How do you feel today on where franchisee comfort with where we're at in the world is today?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I don't know. I don't view what we did as really all that extraordinary. It was the only choice. I mean, all of us in March of 2020 were faced with a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And, I myself had just recently brought out one of my partners, my brother, Mike, who retired, and I had a lot of debt at that time and no revenue, so it was frightening for everyone. And so it was natural, as our core leadership team pulled together, it was natural for us to say, there's only one job to do right here, which is to help franchisees not just get through this, not just survive by the skin of their teeth, but figure out a way to leverage the strengths of the brand to thrive. And to the greatest extent, franchisees have done that. And I think, we deserve maybe just a little bit of credit for helping them over the course of the last several years, navigating the challenges of the business.
Collin, sometimes in the sales process, someone has bought into a business, has been in it for quite some time, and they forget about some of these intangibles that may come up when you're talking to a candidate about buying this process or buying a melting pot. If you think about, like, candidate has come in, new blood into the system is reaching out to you. They're saying, tell me how you stand out. How some of the support structure that Bob just talked about, but how much does this come into the way that you present Melting Pot to new blood coming into the system?
Yeah, you've got a lot of people coming in, quite frankly, that don't know a lot about franchises, but at the same time, you have folks that come in saying, hey, I have this business here. I've eaten a melting pot before. What does this brand offer me that other brands don't? And one thing I do tell them is exactly that, is the RSC. It's the support that we give, the number of people that are working here to create support and give everything we can to make sure our franchisees and locations are getting the best of what we receive. And I think I could speak for that based on the fact that I worked for a long, long time running a restaurant down in Sarasota, Florida for Melting Pot. And I felt it firsthand. If there was issues that came up, if there was people I needed to reach, I mean, it was always a good feeling running and operating a store, knowing full well that I have the support of, quite frankly, a very experienced, knowledgeable group of individuals that know what they're doing. And so it made me at ease so I could run my store successfully.
Bob, we've talked about this, and I'm actually going to pull up the page on your website so that you can see this. I think the first time that I experienced Melting Pot support in a light that I didn't understand was when you gave me a tour of your corporate headquarters. And I'm going to make sure that there's no sound on that. But ultimately, this video, I think, is super impactful because an outsider looking in doesn't understand that there's this entire engine built around franchisee success that's going here. And frankly, I believe you're way too modest in your approach to this, because you're investing so much back into franchisee support. And what I was trying to get to with the question to Collin and to you is that if I'm a current franchise owner that's in this system, I may take for granted what the Melting Pot gives. But me, in my seat, where I'm looking at 100 brands a year intimately, it's very rare for me to see this type of foundation back to it. Do you feel like when you talk to existing franchisees, Bob, do they understand all the resources that are given to them? Much like you book a hotel, you may skip over the concierge. Even though the concierge can get you a reservation at any restaurant you want, you might skip over that because you don't understand the depth of what that provides. Do you think the system understands just how much it's in your blood and your heart for them to succeed?
Well, listen, I think we have very good relationships with our franchisee strategic partners. I mean, do we have disagreements? Of course we do. We look at the business kind of from two different angles. But I think we have been able to successfully work through differences of opinions in a successful and productive and respectful way. I mean, we have a strategic partnership committee. These are franchisees, the best of the best, who are elected by their peers to come and talk with us directly about charting the growth of the brand and finding ways to broaden awareness about the brand, because that's mission one. I mean, and that is what franchise development is about. And I think what sometimes gets misunderstood, that franchise development, a conversation about that amongst existing franchisees, is about Bob and Collin wanting to grow their business. Well, of course, that's a part of it. But what it's really about is making more people aware of the brand, so everyone involved with it, all stakeholders, can win at a higher level. I will tell you this, Nick, franchisees who are part of the family, who have been or are a part of other franchise systems, and we have some, they know how different what we're doing is, because they don't get the commitment to supporting franchisees from those other franchise or organizations that they are a part of. So they're validating for us. And when prospective franchisees from outside the system. Sometimes they choose to call those franchisees just to get that perspective. And when they speak with us, that's what they're telling us, is that, yeah, your people who have been part of other franchise systems or are part of other franchise systems are saying good things about you.
Well, and I want to call out a few things that you just said, because that's my role as moderator of this discussion. You didn't call it franchise sales, you called it franchise development. And there are brands, and I know this, that the way that they build success to their sales team is based on franchise fees acquired throughout the year. And you just said franchise development, which means you are developing buyers into your system. That's a vast difference in the approach. And I now know you in a way that I didn't know you a year ago. That there's something awesome about that, because what you're saying is we're going to develop franchisees. And frankly, for anybody that's entered the system, if you were to reflect back to the moment that you said yes to the Melting Pot and the Melting Pot said yes to you, that was the start of you being a part of family. Because Bob, the other thing you just said there is we might not agree on everything. Right. There are many franchisors that you are not allowed to disagree or agree. You are put in place. We've given you a roadmap, and you're going to go follow that, Mr. and Mrs. Franchisee. And this is where some of the secret sauce of the Melting Pot ends up being behind the scenes, partly because leadership is modest, and partly because you just go to work building great restaurants. One thing, and I would love for you to comment on this and the insight that you're pulling out of it. I'm super fascinated by the open table data that you're able to extract, in that you're seeing like, hey, here's a market that we have a unit in, but there's no reservations available. And it's giving you an insight that maybe we need more melting pots in that marketplace. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, well, I will. But before I do that, I just kind of want to tack on to one thing that you said. Yeah, I mean, we ask our leaders to lead with humility, right? And I think that's appropriate. And our leadership team that we have presently is the best that we've ever had by far, getting a lot of validation from the franchise community about that statement. So I know it to be true. But one of the things that comes along with that is we're not really good at self-promotion, which I think has been a problem for our franchise program in the past. We don't brag. And maybe that we've sold ourselves a little bit short. And one of the things that I've learned from working with your organization is you got a good story to tell. And, don't put that candle under a bushel basket where nobody sees the light. Get out there and tell the story. We're doing that now with your help. I mean, I just got off the phone with another interview with Franchise Marketing Radio just moments ago before starting this webinar. And tonight, Collin, you're picking up a group of people who are in from Connecticut, and we're going to spend the day with them tomorrow exploring whether they're right for the franchise opportunity. So, we are doing things that we haven't done in the past to activate interest in the brand. And we're going to be a little bit more bold, not boastful, but a little bit more bold in our communications and how we speak with people about this business opportunity. Now, having said all of that, I've lost the question that you
open table.
Open table. Thank you. Yeah. We're very excited about what that project has exposed, which is there's a lot more interest in the brand than we have the capacity to serve right now. And people would kill to be in that position. Other brands would kill to be in that position. Now, I want to make sure if there are franchisees watching this webinar, existing franchisees, that they're hearing the right thing. We are paying attention to that, but our objective is to penetrate new markets first, right? I mean, not that we would never put a melting pot in a market where we already exist. We've done that in the past. There are multiple melting pots in markets. Perhaps some franchisees that are listening in right now own multiple melting pots in a single market. So sure, that's going to happen, but our focus, Nick, is to grow the footprint of the brand, more awareness in more markets.
Yep.
But this data is telling a very encouraging story, right? Which that people are interested at record levels in the brand, and what it's done. Not to get, this is not really an operations conversation, but what it's really done is it's shine a bright light on how to solve or improve that situation to serve more customers, and that is through staffing properly. So the more staff we have on the floor when there's demand, which we didn't see before, the more business gets driven for the franchisee in that individual location.
Well, to kudos to the franchise system in a whole. If Open Table is reporting that there's no tables available, what that means is, and look, it starts with the support, because let's look at the timeline. COVID hits, confidence hits an all-time low by restaurant operators. It is what it is. Restaurants were closed, and nobody knew what the future was going to look at. So we're at an all-time low. Franchisor comes on and says, I've just taken on tremendous debt by buying out my partner. However, I'm focused 100% on the future. And if I make a mistake here, that's going to hurt our future. Therefore, I'm fully invested in supporting our franchisees. By having your franchisees' backs, then all of a sudden confidence continues to build with them. If they don't have confidence, then the confidence never comes over to their employees, who now feel beat down because the stress level is too high of the restaurant operator. So it sets the tone, leadership down on, we're going to support is our middle name. Yeah. Now, if you think about like what that really means is you guys are just operators. You're actually not business owners, and many of your franchisees probably aren't either. Operators care about guest experience, employee experience, and then almost like the good karma that comes off of that. Like we're going to grow if we do the basics really, really well. And now it's turning into, all of that has turned into the customer loves us because of all of those things. And those intangibles lead back to the franchise owner. And the franchise owner has done a great job at doing that. So I think awesome stories that are coming out of this. One thing, I'll give an example. We work with a pizza brand. Within the state of Wisconsin, which is where the bulk of their locations are, and it's delivery pizza, so it's not going to be crazy volumes, but call it 1.1 million AUVs. And then you go into North Carolina or into Dallas or into St. Louis, and you see like $800,000 AUVs. And so you have this cluster of stores in Wisconsin, and I can look at that as an example of, when there's a clustering of stores, staffing's easier, operations are easier, customer marketing is easier, collaboration and feeling like you have a family of support is easier. The support structure from corporate becomes easier, and what happens is the volumes go up. Now, most franchisees, when you buy into franchise, you're very protective. You want to own your territory. Nobody comes into it. And I've always looked at these scenarios where the concentric circle or the balloon has happened, and I see so much more financial return back to the franchise owner. But franchising mindsets is protective because they want it all, and they're not wrong to have that mindset. So I'm opening up with this statement, and Bob or Collin or both, I would love your comments on this, on how it relates to Melting Pot and building up continuous brand awareness by opening up a Melting Pot one town over to satisfy this demand and building collaboration within franchisees. How does that relate back to you guys?
Collin, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work with SiteZeus to see exact data when it comes to mobile data around these locations. So when we're utilizing this tool, we're able to say, look, these are the numbers and the figures that we're getting back. You know, inside the store, they might have an idea like, well, we definitely are coming over here, and there's for sure an area of opportunity over here. When really, when we see the data, we know where the customers are coming from in general. And so when I see cities that have a capacity, that have the ability to say, let's put it up north or down south, that does not compete with what's happening currently with the franchisee that's there, I see nothing but opportunity. So like what Nick's saying, if I have more awareness and more people saying, I do know what a melting pot is, I've been to one, we should go to one, it helps both those locations out. But our goal is to not infringe on that. We want to find those spaces, and believe me, there are plenty of where we can get to using that data.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there maybe has been some legacy thinking that it's beneficial for customers to almost think that the melting pot that they dine in their town is the only one that exists, right? That's maybe what we're thinking in our minds. But the reality is, as we do consumer research and unpack this further, the consumer is fully aware that we are a brand with multiple locations. I mean, half of our reservations are coming in through our meltingpot.com API, where every location is showcased. So they're picking a location they want to dine in through that API. So, you know, they're very aware of that. And the other half are coming directly through Google or OpenTable. And likewise, you know, so the customer knows that we're a brand, and that's not a problem for them. In fact, they like the fact, and we in September out in California, our last franchise family reunion, which is what we call kind of our annual meeting, we demonstrated this. We showed how many customers dine routinely at one location, but when they travel elsewhere, they're also seeking out the melting pot in that market. So
yeah, I could say the Connecticut family that's coming this tomorrow, literally, I think has eaten at like 15 plus locations.
Yeah.
So they seek out the melting pot, knowing full well that this is my local store, but if I'm somewhere else, I definitely want to find this other location.
Yes, scale is not a negative thing. Scale is it does create certain challenges, but they're good challenges to have, right? They're the kinds of challenges that when we lean into them, they drive our business forward, and they create more brand awareness and more consumer affinity. And you know, that's what you win with. You know, nobody well, people would kill to have the kind of awareness that we have, I think.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a large shift. And frankly, I know there's some existing franchise owners who are listening to this. There's going to be a shift in mindset that has to hit every type of business owner, including me. I'm a business owner as well. I was looking on LinkedIn news yesterday. I like to see what's trending. And the number one thing that was trending yesterday is that, I'm ballparking this, but roughly $8,000 a year is spent by people who commute to their jobs. And this is where the I don't want to commute is hitting everybody. You hear these stories about the 15-minute city, that people are going to want to get to everything that they want to do within a 15-minute drive time of their home, because we're realizing that life is short, and now let's make things more efficient. And so these things are happening in the work world. It's happening in our personal lives. And now it's going to continue to hit the restaurant world. That I would imagine if OpenTable pulled their data of how far is a user willing to go for a restaurant, it's going to narrow down into this small little bubble around their home. And so this is a big insight, that the melting pot being such an experiential experience, much like the Hard Rock cafes or the frog bars that are in every marina on cruises, like it's an experience. But what you just heard from Collin, 15 different melting pots, the frequency opportunity is going to increase the more flexibility that you have back to the end user. And I think that's going to be a big part of some of the shifts of mindset where this business can go. Bob, any comments on what I just said?
No, I think you're right. I mean, gosh, you know, you're seeing that already kind of played. I know this is different than us, completely different, but look at how it's getting played out and how people are consuming restaurant food in their homes. I mean, it's crazy. You could buy a $5 smoothie and have it delivered to your house because the consumer is that adverse to the idea of getting in their car and going somewhere. So yeah, I think the world in some respects is going to get a lot smaller. But and I think for the I don't want existing franchisees to view our growth aspirations as a negative, but rather as a positive, and that when we strengthen the brand by penetrating markets, we all win at a higher level. And there was a time, though, if there are franchisees who been around a while listening to this, they know that there was a time when someone was trying to ride on our coattails. There was another fondue concept that was imitating us and going into markets ahead of us and attempting to lock out our brand from those markets. And because of the great job that franchisees did, and I think supported by the Restaurant Support Center, we won that battle. And I think that brand at one time had 20, I believe, 18 or 20 locations. Now has one. Might be two. And so, there's another aspect to franchise growth that it's competitive blending, right? Not a lot of brands can say that they are the only fill in the blank. But when you think about a fondue restaurant, dining and entertainment experience, there is only one brand that comes to the consumer's mind, and that's us. And we have to work hard at continuing to grow our footprint so that remains to be the case. And that's good for everybody's business. That's good for existing franchisees who have no desire to grow because they've reached a lifestyle ceiling. They don't want more. And there's nothing wrong with that. They are satisfied with the financial rewards of a single unit. Mm-hmm. It's also beneficial for franchisees who do have growth aspirations. I'm looking at the list here. There's about 6 franchisees who have stated interest in growing this year. And by year's end, we'll have contracts executed with, we believe, all of them. Or whether you're listening as somebody who's not a part of the franchise system, and you're going to be a part of that growth story as we develop the brand in new markets.
Bob, you say so many interesting things that I want to unpack. Whenever you say comments, and I have more. Here are my quick comments. One is, I heard family reunion, and I do feel, again, like the difference between good and great franchise systems is all built on our new franchisees coming in and are they scaling, and our existing franchisees who are in know the secret and are they scaling. There's magic here. But imagine your kid says, "Hey, Bob, we're going to have a child," and you're like, "Ugh, nobody asked you to have another child. What are you doing?" And that's what it feels like when franchisees aren't in lockstep. Let's go grow this thing and build it. It's like, oh, I don't want to be a grandparent. Leave me alone. And so I think it's about building. Now, it has to be built from trust, and you have to trust each other and know that you're in this together and that the best interests. I mean, I heard cite Zeus, so it's all there. The other insight that you said, amazing how many people are eating restaurant food in their home that they're going to spend $5 on that smoothie and then pay for it to be delivered. I think this is actually going, and I'm going to put this on the record. I think this is going to be Melting Pot's biggest opportunity, not to deliver food to the home. What's happening, I can see it. Restaurants, we have a client, unnamed, who is charging 30% more for their product to be delivered into home. And I said, guys, the quality, every second that it leaves your restaurant is going down, and you're going to charge me 30% more plus fees to have it. And I think there's going to be a swing at some point where the customer says enough is enough. We're greed, and it's not unnecessary greed. It's to offset labor costs and food costs and everything else that's hitting our world right now.
Yeah.
But if you start charging more for the product that is decreasing, then the taste bud review is going to decline. Melting Pot is not in that position to deliver and increase pricing to experience at home. And so that's going to keep you up at the top at Elite. And last thing that I'll say is I think attention spans are weak right now. We were driving with our children in the car yesterday, and they're all on their electronics. I said, Mom and Dad didn't have these. We read books when we did this. But you read books to pass time. I think experiential dining, like, yes, there's efficiencies. That's certainly a change of the future, but that special occasion experience, that the all-in experience, I think it continues to go back up to the top, because like if the restaurant at home now is the Cheesecake Factory, where you can order anything in the world, that special experience is going to continue to have value back to the diner, as will their frequency. So again, like a lot of these insights position the brand well, that if you have existing franchisees who are scaling, you have new blood that's coming in who's scaling, and you have a positioning on not fondue, just restaurant goers that is different. I think the brand's well positioned for where this could go.
Yeah, I think so. And but I do want to say we have some franchisees who don't have aspirations to grow, and it's not because they don't have an affinity for the brand. It's because they've got enough.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. I mean, I get that life stage, and I probably should be at that life stage given my advanced age, but I love this business, and I love growing the brand and seeing it represented. And I know what happens when more people are aware of the brand and how that benefits franchisees, and they win at a higher level. And when they win, we win too. So, I don't have a problem with a franchisee who says, no, I'm not interested in additional units right now. The only thing I would say to that franchisee is, okay, accept it, but don't run interference on the need for the brand to grow, because that need exists. And when the thinking is anti-growth within any organization, you know what happens to that organization? It begins to shrivel on the vine. So that's not winning thinking, and we're blessed that our franchisees do validate for us.
Well, there's
to prospective franchisees and say, yeah, this was a good decision, and it's supported my family as a result of it.
Well, and Bob, let's clarify this for existing franchise owners, because no problem. You're happy with what you're able to pull out of the business. You don't want to scale. Don't play interference. It's not just don't play interference. At some point, every human being will exit the business that they own, whether life exits us or you decide to exit. And so what you're building, and this is the beauty of a brand, is you're building an asset as a part of a brand that everybody knows that there's an asset growing. And so even if you're not growing and you support other franchise operators coming into your market, it's going to increase the value of what you own on that single unit, right, so that when you choose to exit, you've actually increased value. Because a franchisee, when it comes to franchise development, the first question they say is, what's in it for me? And what's in it for them is protection of your asset and a higher valuation, right, hopefully at exit. Yeah. Collin, any comments on any of that? Bob, well, I'm hogging the conversation, but
no, you guys are good. I'm happy to be here watching the process. But no, what I would say is, as far as it goes with who we talk to right now within our franchise community, I know the blood and the drive that are in these franchisees. When we talk to people, I could try and just drive sales to anyone that I need to, yet the real priority is to find franchisees that are ready to grow with vigor and energy. And anyone that I've talked to so far this year that's talked to me about what their aspirations are, they are leading operators. These are not anyone that you would look at and say they're not ready. These are all men and women who are talking about growth, talking about progress, building teams around them to make sure that they have the right people in place, which is a huge thing to make sure, especially in this day and age. So believe me, the people we talk to, that they are candidates we are happy to be talking to for growth.
Well, and let's be clear there. I mean, you're talking to candidates. Like the excitement of the brand is going to continue climbing, and so existing franchise owners can continue to scale. They could support new blood coming into the system and build the family, which only protects their asset. And so these are good things that are on the horizon. Bob, if there's one thing you want to let anybody that could watch this, either present or future, what do you want them to know about where you want to go with the business in, say, the next 2 years?
Yeah. Well, I think where I want to go is to feather back in a focus on growing the Melting Pot brand presence. We've not, as I mentioned earlier, that has not been our priority, and it's time for that to change, right? And one of the things that gives me great pleasure, having the privilege to do what we've been doing, is to help people achieve the dream of business ownership. And existing franchisees who are listening to this, they've done that, they've experienced that, and we've enjoyed having the privilege to help them with that. And I want to continue to do that with people we don't know, right? And I also want to help franchisees who have the desire to grow, because they are not hitting their head against the lifestyle ceiling. They want to take on more, want to help them achieve that dream as well. That's what Collin wants to do. We're doing an interview this afternoon in a market that we're spending money in to develop leads. By the way, compliment to you, what your organization is doing is working. Last month, they had the highest number of leads that this brand has ever had, not in recent history, in all of history. So it's working, and there is interest in the brand that we've not seen before as we throttle up. And so thank you for that. And that's exciting. But what I want is to see everybody win, and I mean that sincerely. I want to see our existing franchisees be worth more, as you mentioned. I want to see our existing franchisees continue to drive their business forward, supported by us. I don't want to take our eye off of that focus. And now I want to layer in on top of that a focus on growing the footprint of the brand, so we remain the preeminent, the powerhouse in this very deep but narrow niche of entertainment restaurants.
I was at a conference. I'll mention the brand, Popeyes. This is probably 10 years ago. And I heard the CEO say she built a new prototype, and she flew in some franchisees to see it. And they said, here are all the things they don't like about it. And she goes, we're scrapping it. We're going to listen to their advice and put it into work. What happened beyond that is Popeyes started growing again. And now Popeyes growth is always dependent on who's at the leadership. Like you can see, it stalls, and then new leadership comes in with the right mentality. I share that because I see a lot of similarities, and we're in this together. We're putting our money where our mouth is with corporate operations. We're putting our money where our mouth is on our leadership team. We're putting our mouth in is where we're understanding data and analytics as it relates back to where we should. If I'm having a beer with a franchisee and they say, advise me on how I should look at this, I would say, look, what Bob just said, he cares passionately about winning, about you winning. And winning for you may be one unit, which is totally fine. Right. But be in the family, like be a support of growing this, because it will mean value back to you later on. Or if winning means growing a portfolio, ask Collin or Bob for advice. Even if you don't know how to get there, there's no problem saying, how do I go from 1 to 2 units, or 2 to 3, or 3 to 4, or 10 to 12? Like, use these guys for advice on how to build out this plan. Doesn't mean you have to execute it tomorrow. Just reach out and ask. I think there's value in that. So
Well, Cheryl is an amazing CEO. She resurrected that nearly dead brand.
Yeah.
And she did what we did through this process of considering how to update our stores to keep them relevant. We had our team and an outside group, Scott Squares, visited 22 different locations in the store, interviewing franchisees, talking about what matters to them, and that informed the recommendations that were made and we brought back to the community. And I'll openly admit some of the things that we did were met with skepticism and perhaps not even fully embraced, and that's okay, because like we talked about, we're in a relationship, and in any relationship you're going to have people who have different opinions. The good news is the facts speak for themselves. The stores that have renovated are outperforming those that have not quite done that yet by a noteworthy margin. And the research that we conducted with consumers who are experiencing these updated stores is very validating. So we're really pleased with what's going on now, and I think it just kind of teed us up for what's now happening, which is more interest in growing the footprint of the brand with more locations.
Collin, if there's a existing franchise operator or a new one that has watched this and now wants to accelerate a discovery conversation, what would you advise them to do?
Yeah, I mean, reach out to me. Everyone has my number through all the different connections we have with Melting Pot. Really, my job is to be the concierge, is to talk about the opportunities that we have available, give insight to those areas. If I have information or data that I can exchange to you, we can do that. We actually have some great steps that we put together recently to give more insight to estimations and things that we can do to help them understand particular address worthy areas. So it's all there for them, really, and it's at no cost either, which I think is the thing that we are delivering, which is everything's here for you. I'm available all the time. I'm ready to happy and talk. Reach out and talk.
Well, and just because I like showing validation, it just shows, like, watch this. I can put all these franchise owners who have joined our call saying good morning and communicating, and we appreciate all of you paying attention and listening to this. Again, like, I think if I give my final 2 cents, and I'm not paid for giving 2 cents, I give it freely and probably way too often. But I just heard what Collin just said is very important. Reach out; it costs you nothing, and jumpstart a conversation, because over the next 2 years, it's going to continue to grow. I did a Meet the Zor webinar before this with a brand, and they grew fast. As soon as they said we're ready to go, they had all the operational structure and foundational elements in place, and they put it in play. And now the amount of people that are reaching out and saying, "Okay, I'm ready," including existing franchisees who are getting rejected, is high, because there's no more territory. Like there's a finite amount of territory here. So having the conversation and just putting your name in the hat to say at some point might have value for you. So for Bob and Collin, I'm Nick. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Hopefully you got value out of our discussion. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nick. Good to see you again.